Have you ever noticed how people suddenly change the way they treat you? The same voices that ignored your presence begin speaking with respect. The same hands that never reached for yours suddenly want to shake it. Funny, isn't it? They never respected your kindness. They respected the moment you stopped chasing, stopped begging, and stopped needing their approval. The world has a strange habit of confusing dependence with weakness and distance with value. The day you learned to stand alone was the day everyone finally started looking your way. Stop asking for permission to exist. That is where the trap begins. The moment you wait for someone else's approval before speaking, acting, dreaming, or becoming who you are, you quietly hand them control over your life. They may never notice it, but you will feel it every single day. Every decision starts passing through their opinion instead of your own mind. Every step becomes slower because you're busy looking over your shoulder, hoping someone nods in agreement. People have an interesting way of measuring value. If they see you constantly trying to impress them, they assume you're standing below them. Not because you're weak, but because your actions tell them their opinion carries more weight than your own. You laugh a little louder at their jokes. You explain yourself too much. You apologize for things that don't need an apology. You keep proving your loyalty, hoping one day they'll finally say, "You're enough." That day rarely comes. Approval is a moving target. Every time you reach it, someone moves it farther away. They want you to earn another compliment, another invitation, another smile, another moment of acceptance. Without realizing it, your life becomes an endless performance for an audience that never bought a ticket. The strange part is that the more desperately you try to fit in, the more invisible you become. You lose the sharp edges that made you memorable. You stop saying what you truly think because honesty might upset someone. You stop chasing your own ambitions because they seem too risky. You become a carefully edited version of yourself, designed to keep everyone comfortable except the person staring back at you in the mirror. Comfortable people rarely respect obedient people. They enjoy them. There is a difference. The person who always agrees is easy to keep around. The person who never says no is predictable. The person who constantly seeks validation becomes emotionally inexpensive because everyone knows exactly how to control them. A compliment keeps them close. A little criticism makes them work twice as hard. A little silence makes them panic. Their emotions are no longer their own. Watch what happens when someone realizes you need their approval. They begin giving less of it, not always out of cruelty. Sometimes because human nature values what doesn't come easily. If your confidence rises and falls based on another person's opinion, your peace belongs to them instead of you. Imagine carrying a cup with holes in the bottom. Every compliment fills it for a moment, but before long it's empty again. Then you run back, hoping someone pours a little more into it. You spend years searching for people willing to refill something that was never meant to depend on them. Real confidence doesn't ask the room if it's allowed to enter. It walks in quietly, not because it believes it's better than everyone else, but because it no longer needs permission to believe in itself. Some people will dislike you the moment you stop asking for their approval. That surprises many people. They think confidence attracts everyone. It doesn't. It exposes everyone. The ones who benefited from your insecurity suddenly feel uncomfortable because they can no longer influence your choices. They call you different. They call you distant. They call you arrogant because they cannot call you controllable anymore. You begin speaking less, but meaning every word. You stop explaining every decision. You stop defending your boundaries as if they were crimes. You stop chasing people who repeatedly show you they can live without your presence. You realize that your attention is valuable, and not everyone deserves unlimited access to it. The silence becomes louder than your old desperation. People notice, not because you demanded attention, but because you stopped begging for it. The approval you spent years chasing was never the thing you needed. It was only a substitute for trusting your own judgment. The day you stop treating other people's opinions like a final verdict is the day your decisions become your own, your failures become your lessons, and your victories finally belong to you instead of the people who happened to clap the loudest. There comes a moment when something inside you changes, not because the world suddenly becomes kinder, but because you stop depending on it. You stop waiting for someone to rescue you, encourage you, or complete you. You realize that every time you leaned too heavily on another person, you gave them the power to decide whether you stood tall or fell apart. That is a dangerous place to live. Dependence has a strange way of making people overlook your value. The more they know you cannot walk away, the less careful they become with how they treat you. It's not always intentional. Sometimes people simply stop appreciating what they believe will never leave. Your constant availability becomes ordinary. Your sacrifices become expected. Your loyalty becomes invisible because it no longer surprises anyone. Then one day, everything becomes quiet. You stop calling first. You stop chasing conversations that only survive because you keep them alive. You stop forcing yourself into places where your presence barely matters. Not out of anger, out of clarity. That is when the balance shifts. Independence doesn't announce itself with loud speeches. It doesn't need dramatic exits or emotional revenge. It simply removes the need to convince anyone of your worth. The energy once wasted trying to be accepted is now invested in building yourself. You begin solving your own problems instead of searching for someone to save you from them. You become comfortable making decisions without collecting 10 different opinions. You stop measuring your life by how many people approve of it. People notice that change. Not because you become louder, because you become harder to control. The person who doesn't need constant reassurance cannot be manipulated with compliments. The person who isn't afraid of being alone cannot be threatened with rejection. The person who has learned to stand on their own feet becomes unpredictable to those who once relied on their insecurity. That unpredictability creates respect. Think about it. A tree with deep roots doesn't beg the wind for permission to stand. Storms may bend its branches, but they cannot convince it to become something else. Meanwhile, the smallest plants are pulled in every direction because they have nothing holding them in place. Independence works the same way. Your roots become your principles, your discipline, your confidence, and your ability to survive without leaning on people who only support you when it's convenient. Some people mistake independence for coldness. They couldn't be more wrong. Being independent doesn't mean refusing love, friendship, or connection. It means refusing to make them your source of identity. You appreciate people without becoming dependent on them. You enjoy companionship without fearing solitude. You give kindness without expecting it to be returned every single time. That difference changes everything. The people who once believed they could take your presence for granted suddenly realize you have options. They see you investing your energy elsewhere. They notice you smiling without needing their attention. They watch you move forward without asking whether they're coming with you. Suddenly, the respect that was missing begins to appear. Not because you demanded it, because your independence forced them to see your value. Funny how people often ignore a light that's always shining, but start searching for it the moment it disappears. Human nature has a habit of appreciating distance more than availability. The less desperate you become for attention, the more attention you naturally attract. The less you rely on others to define your happiness, the more interesting your life becomes to those watching from the sidelines. Freedom changes the way you carry yourself. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You stop shrinking your dreams to fit someone else's comfort. You stop staying where you're merely tolerated because you've discovered what it feels like to respect yourself. That quiet confidence unsettles people who expected you to remain dependent. They remember the version of you that constantly sought reassurance, and now they're faced with someone who no longer asks for permission to exist. The same silence they once ignored now carries weight. The same boundaries they once crossed now remain firmly closed. The same person they underestimated begins living without waiting for anyone's approval, support, or validation. And suddenly, the respect they never offered freely starts arriving on its own. Most people think power is found in the loudest voice. They believe the person who argues the longest, explains the most, or demands attention always wins. They couldn't be more mistaken. Noise is often nothing more than insecurity wearing a confident mask. The louder someone fights to be understood, the more they reveal how desperately they need someone else's acceptance. Silence works differently. It doesn't rush to defend itself. It doesn't beg to be believed. It doesn't waste energy trying to convince people who already decided not to understand. That is why silence unsettles people. When someone insults you and you immediately react, they learn exactly how to control your emotions. They discover which words make you angry, which accusations make you defensive, and which criticisms keep you awake at night. Every emotional reaction becomes information. Every explanation becomes another opportunity for them to twist your words. Before long, you're no longer having a conversation. You're trapped inside a game they designed. Now, imagine saying nothing. Not because you have no answer, because not every attack deserves your attention. The room changes. The person expecting an argument suddenly has nothing to fight against. The one waiting to see you lose control watches you remain calm instead. That quiet response creates more discomfort than 1,000 shouted replies ever could. People are prepared for resistance. They're rarely prepared for composure. Silence forces others to confront themselves. Without your emotional reaction to distract them, they're left alone with their own words. Some begin questioning what they said. Others become louder because they mistake your calm for weakness. They keep pushing, hoping to provoke even the smallest crack in your composure. Many eventually reveal more about themselves than you ever needed to know. Words are expensive. Every sentence you speak should carry purpose. Yet most people spend them carelessly. They explain every decision as if standing before a judge. They defend every rumor as if strangers deserve access to their thoughts. They answer every criticism as if silence means surrender. It doesn't. Sometimes silence is simply refusing to attend an argument that offers no reward. Think about the strongest people you've ever met. They rarely rush to fill every empty moment with conversation. They observe first. They listen carefully. While everyone else is busy speaking, they're collecting information. They notice what people say when they think no one is paying attention. They notice the contradictions, the hidden intentions, the insecurity disguised as confidence. Silence sharpens awareness. Talking too much dulls it. There is something fascinating about people. Give them enough silence, and they begin telling you everything. They explain themselves without being asked. They reveal their fears while trying to appear fearless. They expose their motives while believing they're hiding them, all because they became uncomfortable with the quiet. Silence has a way of making truth impatient. This doesn't mean becoming cold or emotionally unavailable. It means choosing your responses instead of allowing your emotions to choose them for you. There is enormous strength in refusing to react immediately. A pause can save you from words that would take years to repair. A calm expression can protect your peace. better than the cleverest argument. Not every opinion deserves your reply. Not every insult deserves your anger. Not every misunderstanding deserves your explanation. The world encourages constant reaction. Every comment demands an answer. Every disagreement invites a debate. Every criticism expects a defense. People become addicted to proving themselves until they forget that peace often belongs to those who stop participating in unnecessary battles. The most dangerous person in any room isn't always the loudest one. It's the one who remains impossible to provoke. The one who hears everything but reveals little. The one who understands that emotional discipline is greater than emotional expression. That kind of silence cannot be manipulated because it doesn't seek approval. It doesn't chase the final word. It doesn't fear being misunderstood by people who were never interested in understanding. Eventually, people begin treating you differently. They realize gossip cannot shake you. Provocation cannot control you. Empty criticism cannot redirect your path. They stop expecting easy reactions because you've stopped handing out free access to your emotions. Your quiet presence starts carrying more weight than endless conversations ever did, and every measured pause becomes a reminder that true strength isn't found in speaking first, speaking last, or speaking the loudest, but in knowing exactly when your words are worth breaking the silence. There is a dangerous habit that quietly steals people's lives. It doesn't arrive with loud warnings or dramatic consequences. It slips into your mind, disguised as kindness. It whispers that your worth depends on how useful you are to everyone else. That if enough people like you, approve of you, or praise you, then maybe you'll finally feel complete. So you begin collecting validation the way others collect money, believing one more compliment will somehow make the emptiness disappear. It never does. Validation is borrowed confidence. It feels powerful for a moment, but it never truly belongs to you. The instant someone criticizes you, ignores you, or chooses someone else, that confidence disappears because it was never built from within. You become trapped in an endless cycle of emotional dependence, constantly waiting for strangers to decide whether you're valuable today. Think about how exhausting that is. Every photo you post, every opinion you share, every decision you make, some part of your mind waits for applause. When the applause comes, you smile. When it doesn't, you question yourself. The stage changes, but the performance never ends. People who rely on validation become easy to predict. Offer them praise, and they'll stay. Withhold attention, and they'll chase it. Give them approval, and they'll work even harder to keep it. They slowly stop asking what they truly want because they're too busy asking what everyone else expects from them. Without realizing it, they become actors in a story someone else is writing. Self-worth works differently. It doesn't ask the audience whether the performance was good enough. It doesn't measure success by the volume of applause. It understands something most people spend years trying to learn. Your value exists before anyone recognizes it. A diamond buried beneath the earth doesn't become worthless because nobody has discovered it yet. Its value never depended on human attention. The same is true for you. Just because someone fails to appreciate your loyalty, intelligence, kindness, or resilience doesn't mean those qualities disappeared. It only means they lacked the eyes to recognize them. The problem is that many people hand strangers the responsibility of deciding how they should feel about themselves. Imagine giving someone you've known for 5 minutes the keys to your emotional state. One compliment makes your day. One insult ruins your week. One rejection convinces you that you're not enough. That isn't confidence. That's emotional surrender. The strongest people aren't those who never receive criticism. They're the ones who don't let criticism rewrite their identity. They listen when correction helps them grow, but they refuse to let random opinions define who they are. They understand that not every voice deserves equal influence. Some opinions are simply noise. The world is full of people projecting their own fears onto others. Someone insecure calls confidence arrogance. Someone afraid of change criticizes ambition. Someone uncomfortable with your growth suddenly claims you've changed. They're right. You did change. You stopped shrinking yourself to make insecure people feel comfortable. You stopped apologizing for your ambition. You stopped explaining why your dreams matter. That decision makes some people uncomfortable because your confidence reminds them of everything they abandoned within themselves. Validation seeks permission. Self-worth creates permission. There is an enormous difference between the two. Validation asks, "Do you think I'm enough?" Self-worth quietly answers, "I already know." That answer doesn't come from pride. It comes from experience. From surviving days nobody clapped for. From rebuilding yourself when nobody noticed. From continuing forward even when the room stayed silent. Those moments build something compliments never can. An unshakable foundation. Once you discover that foundation, your choices begin changing. You stop accepting disrespect just to avoid being alone. You stop begging people to stay after they've shown you they want to leave. You stop chasing approval from people who only acknowledge your existence when they need something from you. You become comfortable disappointing others if it means remaining honest with yourself. That frightens people who benefited from your need for acceptance because they realize the old version of you negotiated your value. The new version doesn't. Your standards become stronger than your desire to be liked. Your peace becomes more important than popularity. Your respect for yourself outweighs the temporary satisfaction of hearing someone tell you what you've been desperate to believe all along. The need for constant validation slowly fades, replaced by a quiet certainty that cannot be bought with compliments or destroyed by criticism, leaving behind someone who no longer waits for the world to decide what they have always been worth. The moment you stop clinging to people, everything changes. Not because the world suddenly becomes fair, but because your grip finally loosens. You stop trying to force relationships that only survive because of your effort. You stop chasing conversations that always end with you waiting for a reply. You stop carrying the emotional weight of people who never intended to carry yours. That is detachment. Most people misunderstand it. They think detachment means becoming cold, heartless, or incapable of caring. They imagine someone who feels nothing and trusts no one. That isn't strength. That's fear wearing armor. Real detachment isn't about refusing to love. It's about refusing to lose yourself while loving someone else. There is a difference. The person who is attached believes their happiness depends on someone staying. Every delayed message feels like rejection. Every disagreement feels like the end. Every moment of distance creates panic because they've unknowingly tied their peace to another person's choices. That is not love. That is dependence disguised as affection. The frightening part is how normal it becomes. You begin adjusting your personality to avoid upsetting people. You hide your opinions because disagreement might push them away. You ignore disrespect because loneliness feels worse. You sacrifice your boundaries piece by piece until there's almost nothing left that truly belongs to you. Then one day, you become a stranger to yourself. You remember who you used to be before you started begging for acceptance, before every decision required someone else's approval, before every smile depended on whether someone chose to notice you. That realization hurts, but it also sets you free. Detachment begins the moment you understand one simple truth. You cannot control another person's heart. You cannot force loyalty. You cannot convince someone to appreciate what they already take for granted. You cannot argue your way into being valued. Once that truth settles into your mind, something remarkable happens. The endless struggle begins to disappear. You stop trying to change people who have already shown you who they are. Instead of chasing explanations, you observe actions. Instead of believing promises, you pay attention to patterns. Instead of hoping people will become different tomorrow, you accept who they are today. Acceptance is powerful, not because it lowers your standards, because it removes your illusions. The people meant to remain in your life won't require endless persuasion. They won't make respect feel like a reward you have to earn every single day. They won't keep testing how much disappointment you'll tolerate before walking away. Detachment teaches you to leave the table when respect is no longer being served. Without shouting, without revenge, without dramatic speeches, just quiet footsteps. That silence confuses people. They expected another argument, another emotional message. Another desperate attempt to repair something they kept breaking. Instead, they find nothing. No pleading, no chasing, no negotiation. Suddenly, they begin noticing the space you left behind. Funny how absence often speaks louder than presence. When you're always available, people assume you always will be. They postpone appreciation because they believe there's no urgency. They become careless with your time, your loyalty, and your patience because they mistake consistency for permanence. Then you leave, not to teach them a lesson, because you've finally learned one yourself. Your peace cannot survive where your dignity is constantly sacrificed. The strange part is what happens next. The same people who barely noticed your efforts suddenly notice your absence. The same voices that ignored your value begin wondering why you've become distant. The same people who expected unlimited chances suddenly realize those chances were never endless. You didn't become more valuable overnight. You simply stopped giving away your value for free. Detachment changes the way you carry yourself. Your words become fewer but stronger. Your expectations become healthier. Your emotions stop depending on whether someone chooses to text back, invite you, or approve of your choices. You begin living from a place of confidence instead of fear. People sense that. They see someone who enjoys company but doesn't fear solitude. Someone who gives kindness without begging for it in return. Someone who walks away from disrespect instead of negotiating with it. That kind of freedom is rare because most people spent their lives trying to hold on tighter, believing tighter control creates stronger relationships. In reality, the tighter the grip, the faster everything slips away. Detachment releases the fear of losing what was never truly yours to control, replacing desperation with calm, dependence with confidence, and emotional chaos with a quiet strength that no longer chases people, approval, or affection, because it has finally learned that the greatest power belongs to the person who can let go without losing themselves.